This video is a video response to Mr. Luke Smith, who's a YouTuber, and he has made a video asking for others to convince him to use Emacs. If you are watching this and you are not Luke Smith, maybe you would like to still watch this video, given that I'm going to be outlining the reasoning for abandoning Vim or I don't know, like what do people use, like Sublime Text, and actually jumping ship on those subpar editors and learning how to use Emacs. First and foremost, this video might be a bit lengthy, and that's cool, because he has made a little contest, a little quote-unquote competition, where he would like to not only be told to use Emacs, but also see how Emacs works, what Emacs is, and so on. And I initially thought, maybe people will jump in, maybe people will actually make videos, so there's no reason for me to chime in. But I woke up and I figured, a man's gotta do what a man's gotta do, right? First and foremost, I have been using Vim for between 5 and 6 years, somewhere around that. I have not marked a day in my calendar, believe it or not, and I switched to Emacs cold turkey. One day I installed Emacs, I tried using it, I uninstalled it, I installed it again, I used it some more, I actually configured it, and this was also the day where I actually uninstalled Vim, got rid of my vimrc. What you asked for was to see what Emacs actually is. You seem to have a good understanding of what Emacs is capable of. To some extent I am going to be capitalizing on this. So first and foremost, this is my YouTube VM that I do my YouTube stuff in. This is my Emacs config. First thing you notice, this is not me recording a single window. This is me recording an entire VM. So this is what my playful system looks like. This is Emacs acting as a window manager. I do not use a tiling window manager anymore like you do right now. Like I used iFreed and I used BSPWM. Now I use Emacs. Emacs even has a built-in D menu, so you can like launch Firefox, and I'm going to have a browser inside of Emacs. And it acts like a regular buffer, so you can kill it, you can move it between workspaces, and much like in, iFree, you'll be familiar with that. You have workspaces, you have multiple workspaces, easy as pie, accessible, much like you're used to with the super key and numbers. Now let's get rid of Firefox for a sec. So yeah, this is why it's full screen. This is why I'm going to be doing everything inside of Emacs, because this is what I do anyways. And the only X window I use anymore is a browser. In this case, this is Entergo, so I have Firefox. I actually use Qt browser still with Vim Keybindings. So why would you ever take the bait? Why would you ever use Emacs? So the most popular argument to convince people goes as follows. Everything that Vim is capable of, and I mean virtually everything, Emacs can do. This is not a particularly good argument, because why would you ever bother with Emacs if, you're already using Vim, you have your optimized workflow, and there's virtually no reason for you to switch. This is where the second part of the sentence comes in, because not everything Emacs can do, Vim can actually do. Emacs is capable of a lot of things that Vim users cannot even dream about doing. And that's cool. That's fine, because Vim is a rather bland text editor that you can configure. It's functional, a lot of people love it. Emacs is a bit more. Emacs acts as more than just a text editor. The reason for this is because about 30% of Emacs source code is written in C, and it's an interpreter for Lisp, or eLisp, and 70% of it is written in, eLisp, so it interprets itself, so to speak. This is why you can extend Emacs to degrees that are unimaginable for other software, which is really handy. Because you have got all these crazy packages, like I'm using my text editor to open up my web browser, for instance. So there's that. Now if you are already using a window manager and you maybe are not very keen on switching, that's cool. You do not need to use this. That's another big thing. If you don't like something about Emacs or a certain package, just don't use it. If there is some functionality that you don't like, you can change it. Now, the next thing is Emacs is not only, it's not an IDE. It's not only there for your programming needs. I use it mostly for software development, but I also write a good amount of prose. And I do it inside of Emacs because it is easy. It's a lot easier, right? So you write a lot of LaTeX. You can write LaTeX inside of Emacs and have the same functionality like this live preview thing. You can do that with Emacs as well. I would showcase this, but I do not write LaTeX. I don't even know the syntax, because I don't need to, because Emacs knows the syntax and I can just write org mode, right? I do know people in real life who use Emacs to write LaTeX. I cannot get a hold of them right now, so I can't really ask them how to configure it specifically to like live preview and all that, but the built-in LaTeX functionality is pretty good anyways. Alright, now on to the next thing. Let me switch the buffer to a scratch buffer. At the top you can see that this buffer is for text that is not saved, that is the scratch buffer. It's automatically opened, but it is also for Lisp evaluation. So you can do something, and if you've watched my tutorials, like the people who are watching this, you already know this, I have showcased this. You can do something like this, and evaluate this expression, and at the bottom you'll see it evaluated correctly. 2 plus 5 is 7. This is not Emacs running an external interpreter or feeding this line into like SPCL or anything. This is actually built-in Emacs functionality. The reason this is important is because everything you do in Emacs, every bit of configuration, is done in eLisp. Like for Vim, one of the things I did not like about Vim, despite my heavy usage of it, was the config syntax. I thought it was confusing. I'm pretty sure that I have like barely ever written any configuration by myself. My vimrc was like, I don't know, 200 lines long that I amassed over a few years. Most of it was copy-pasted from like Stack Overflow, right? With Emacs, I write my config myself because the syntax actually makes sense. Because it is all Lisp expressions, or eLisp to be precise. eLisp stands for Emacs Lisp, right? Now, with this out of the way, the important part is that every time you launch Emacs, your source file will be, or like your config file will be loaded. The difference is, in Vim, it's being loaded, parsed, and then values are being set to, well, whatever you set them to, right? In Emacs, your config file is software. It's a program that is being ran. And all of it is going to be ran, and then your Emacs will be set to look and act the way you like it. So for instance, you can do something like menu bar mode, and give it a positive value, evaluate it, and you'll see I got a menu bar now. Pretty nifty. I don't like the menu bar, so in my config this line resides, so it disables the menu bar because I think it's annoying and it takes up precious space on the screen. Alright, this is about it for eLisp. There's not much to show here, like other than evaluating like basic Lisp expressions and using it for your configuration is all. Now about configuration, let me just quickly visit my config file. I have a key binding for this. And in here, this is my config file. It is written in org mode. I am sure at this point you are sick of hearing org mode over and over again in your comments. But I wrote my config file in org mode because now, what annoyed me with Vim is I ended up just adding stuff to my config, and when something stopped working, it was a pain in the bum to actually find the culprit and debug it. So now I have my config nicely organized. So I have like a section for the terminal, I can hit tab, a little bit of prose here, and then this is the code that sets the default shell to be bash, because I use bash, I do not use ZSH. Now the way this works, when I have a little line in my actual initializing file that says grab this file, grab all the Emacs list that's in there, ignore everything else, and then launch it. So it runs these lines, and this way it configures Emacs. That's really nifty because you can really get crazy with it, and you can write big packages. You can customize everything in Emacs to be exactly the way you want. This is why I use Emacs. This is why I really like it. Setting up key bindings, very easy. Like I have what I did in BSPWM, like super and return opens up a terminal, right? It just works. There's nothing else to it. It did not ask me what shell to run or anything. I can just close it. You can obviously just, as a side note, you can obviously very easily split the window, split the frame into multiple windows. It's really not particularly difficult. The key bindings are very easy to learn. Like it's Control X 2 and 3. So, oops. So if you're into that, this is precisely what you're going to be doing. You can have the same functionality you have in Vim. Let's go back to the config file for a second. There's a few things here that I am very happy with. For instance, the terminal bit, that's cool. The mode line, which is the thing here at the bottom, that displays all the important information. Dashboard's not important. Projectile is a package that manages your Git projects for you. So you have access to like all the files, but only inside a Git repository, for instance. Here's a bit for my window manager. Just a lot of text in here, a few key bindings, so it makes the usage a bit nicer. Media, I use Emacs for music. It acts as an MPD client, so you wouldn't have to like, if you switch to Emacs and if you really wanted to, you can just ditch NCMP/CPP, which is what I used before, and just use Emacs for your music, right? Emacs is not capable of actually playing music. It needs a backend, and if you are already running MPD, more power to you. It's easy to set up. So there's that. I use Emacs for instant messaging. I have it set up for IRC, but I'm also running a BitLB server in the background on my actual machine, not in this VM, where I use Emacs for like Discord, Telegram, Facebook chat, and so on and so forth. All of this can be done from within Emacs. I do not need external clients. I do not need to use my browser for it. Alright, now it also integrates really well with Git. There's an extension called Magit, or Magit, and it's really cool. I'll show you in a sec. The heart of Emacs is really the extensions, because Emacs by itself, now let me, was it Emacs.q? Yeah, this is what Emacs looks like by default. This is what it looks like when you download it and install it. And the difference between Vim and Emacs is when you install Vim, the out-of-the-box experience is actually pretty good. Right? I think so, at least. I think Vim is very logical. It has a lot of functionality built in by default. With Emacs, that's not the case. Emacs by default is not a very good text editor. It is certainly very powerful, right? It still has this interpretation kind of thing going on in the background, but that's about it. Okay, that's about it. You need to actually spend some time to configure it to your liking for it to be a good tool for each use. It's not like with Vim where you just install it and just, add like 2 packages, like some macros in there and 2 key bindings and you're good to go. With Emacs that's not the case. I do not know nobody who has like a Emacs config file under 100 lines. Mine is like, if you take out all the pros, mine is like, I don't know, 400 lines or something. And it's only growing bigger. And even though at this point I'm pretty happy with what I have, so I don't have to waste time actually configuring stuff. I can do things and be productive. Let's get rid of the blank Emacs here for a sec. So again, let me show you something from my config file. I need to find it. There is something that I was really annoyed by. In Vim, I would navigate to a word, anywhere in the word, and I could hit CIW in normal mode to delete the word and then put me in insert mode. Emacs did not have this capability. There is a function called kill word that you can do. but I found that it does not do what it says on the tin. Instead of killing a word, it kills from the cursor position to the end of the word. So, because it annoyed me, I wrote a function that simply replaces it. That's what it looks like. Let me put it up in here. This is elisp again. You can tell by the many parentheses. But even if you do not know how to really write Lisp, it's not particularly difficult to learn the basic syntax so you can write your own custom functions. So for instance here in elisp you can have like special signs in your function names. It doesn't really matter as long as it doesn't have any white space. Pretty much everything is fair game. Interactive means that you can call it manually, which I'm going to show you in just a second. Forward character 1, you can pretty much guess what it does. It just goes forward by one character, same as hitting Ctrl F. Backward word goes back to a word, which is Alt B or Meta B, and then it kills the entire word. I bound it to Ctrl C, WK, and it just works. I just added it. I didn't need to do anything else. If I move to a word now, I do Ctrl C, WK, destroys the word. Very, very easy, very simple, nothing else to it. If you are missing some functionality in Emacs, or if you would like to change it, you can. And even if you don't know elisp, there's a lot of people, like maybe use IRC. There is a Emacs channel on Freenode. These folks are very, very nice. So if you really need some sort of advice, they can give it to you. Like, so there's, yeah, that's about it. Like, you can write your own custom functions. This is the key concept of Lisp, or of Emacs, sorry. Because everything you want it to have, all the functionality, you can either like grab a package that does it for you or write it yourself. So it is truly, truly customizable. Now there's people who like Vim key bindings so much that they want to use them inside of Emacs, and that's also doable with an extension called Evil Mode. Evil Mode pretty much emulates, or simulates much rather, Vim inside of Emacs, and it does so very, very well. I know a lot of people who use it simply because they used Vim before, much like I did, but I decided to go cold turkey and just go from the ground up. And you can do that as well. If you really like your HJKNL, it's totally fine. You can use that as well. But I also liked HJKNL because it's much easier to use than the arrow keys, right? You don't need to move your hand, everything's fine. Now, in Emacs, moving your cursor up, down, left, right is done with Ctrl P for previous, which goes up, Ctrl N, which goes down, B, which is back, and F, which is forward. These key bindings made absolutely zero sense to me initially. And it was especially difficult to get used to B and F. Like N and P is somewhat fine, because N is at the bottom of the keyboard, P is at the top. Easy to learn, right? Now if you put your hands, just grab your hands right now, put them on your keyboard in like the most relaxed position you can virtually imagine. Not like the home row. Just slap them on your keyboard. Like my right hand pinky is on P, my pointer finger's on N. Like I'm already there. I don't even need to flex my hand. The most relaxed position already gets like stuff done. That's just something I found. I don't know, I like it. The other option is, if you really, really want to, you can run Vim inside of Emacs in a terminal, right? Like, I don't have Vim installed, my bad. But you can totally do that. You can have terminals open and use Emacs as a substitute for like Tmux. Like, obviously you do not need to run Tmux because you are running a tiling window manager. Maybe someone else, however, does. So you can totally do that. You can use this as a terminal multiplexer if you really wanted to. So you can totally run Vim inside, but you know that's just the tip of the iceberg with the functions and evil mode. I do not have evil mode installed because really the you can get used to Emacs key bindings in like a few days. And then if you don't like some of them, you can easily rebind them. There's only one key binding that you are not allowed to rebind. That's Ctrl M, because Ctrl M is hardbound to act as return. So hitting Ctrl M is the same as hitting enter. I don't know why this is the case, or I did not know, but then I learned to use Control M instead of hitting return with my pinky, and no, none of that carpal tunnel garbage. It actually works very well. Control M instead of return is actually quite handy. Why on earth you can't just rebind Control M? I don't know. Now for moving inside of Emacs, there is a few extensions that I have installed that I really like because they make me more productive. Actually, where do we even start? Let's start with which key. Let me just grab a sip of my beverage here. There's one very nice extension for Emacs. When you start inputting any key combination and do not finish it, Emacs will pop up this little window in here that is going to show you all the possible completions for your command and then which function it's going to run. Now hold up, I said function. Everything inside of Emacs is functions. Moving your cursor around invokes functions. Everything on your keyboard is bound to functions, right? So when you do meta X, like yours will look a bit differently, but what I have here is a list of functions in Emacs that I can invoke manually. So if I have the function with my nickname and then kill in a word, I can do navigate to it and run it, and it deleted a word up top. You can totally invoke commands or functions just like that manually. If you have like some obscure functions that you wrote that you don't really need to use all the time, so you don't have a key binding for them, you can invoke them manually, which is great. It's really nice. And Emacs has a lot of functions built in, right? So for instance, again, I showed you which key. It's really handy when you're learning Emacs, so you don't really yet know all the key bindings, which is cool. Another package that is pretty much staple for most people is called AV. AV lets you jump inside the visible part of the buffer very easily. I have it bound to meta S, and when I hit meta S, it asks me for a character. Let's say I'm here. I would like to go to this E right here. Normally I would have to go down a few lines, then forward. I can hit E, and now it has these little hints, right? Every E in the visible portion of the buffer has these hints. This is where I would like to go, so I'm hitting KG, and my cursor is already there. Obviously now I'm explaining it, but in a real world situation, like, I don't know, you can do it really quickly, very efficiently. You barely even have to move your cursor around when you are just trying to jump to somewhere. AV is a very nice extension. Another thing is, for instance, I have obviously syntax highlighting. Well, let's hope it does most of it out of the box. I have these parentheses being colorized, so I know which level I'm at every single time. Like this, I see the blue parentheses here, I know that I closed off the statement. That's also very nice, and it also works for other symbols. You can totally set it up the way you want. So if you, I write Lisp because I like Lisp. If you are using different languages, that's totally fine. You can also obviously do that, right? The next thing is modes. When you start using Emacs as a Vim user, you might be a little bit confused because Vim has modes and Emacs has modes, and these modes for both of those are completely different things. For instance, in Vim you have insert mode, normal mode, visual mode, and then visual block mode, right? In Vim, that's all there is to it, and you switch between modes to pretty much switch your key map, so your keys do different things. In Emacs you have modes for everything. Modes are pretty much a preset set of configuration for this buffer. So in this buffer, let's go to the bottom here, it says org. This is the major mode. Every buffer has one major mode, so now Emacs knows this is an org file, so it parses all of these headings correctly, right? This is, and it shows me this, this is the visual feedback. Its major mode is org. So this is an org file. Now you have minor modes. I have a lot more than these two, but they are diminished, so they are not being shown here because otherwise this line would be like this long, and I don't want that. I don't think that looks nice. And you can have multiple minor modes, and for instance the parentheses coloring thing is a minor mode. It's a single minor mode that does only this, and that's it. And I feel like it follows the Unix philosophy very well. Do one thing and do it well. These packages most of the time do one single thing and they do it very well. Now you might argue that I am a hypocrite because I use Emacs and I adhere to the Unix philosophy. I think Emacs does one thing and it does it well, and it interprets ELISP. That's all it does technically, and it does incredibly well. So this is another minor mode, and you can have as many minor modes as you like. Like I have, for instance, Company, which is a framework to for autocompletion. There's two major ones. There's like autocomplete and Company. I use Company, but it doesn't really matter. And the way autocompletion works, which is something that really bothers me with Vim, when I tried to install a big package like uComplete.me for C and C++ development, it was annoying. It was a bitch to install, right, and set up correctly. The way autocompletion in Emacs works is you install like an engine, in my case Company, and you can add backends to it. So again, this is a VM. This is not my main machine, so I do not have all the backends installed. I have, for instance, a backend for C. I have a backend for Lisp. I have a backend for like Python. And it's not just like stupid autocompletion that looks for similar words in a buffer. It actually it uses a real backend, a real server, like a Jedi, for instance. It uses, much like in Vim, a Jedi server to offer you like almost IntelliSense level completion, which I think is neat. The autocompletion in Emacs is really good. So yeah, don't get confused when you hear Emacs users talking about modes. We don't actually switch between these modes all the time. They're there and they're in the background. The next thing is, you are probably already annoyed enough by people telling you to use org, and I use org because by learning org mode, I do not need to learn LaTeX. I don't need to learn how to use Beamer. I don't need to learn how to make like beautiful HTML, web pages. I have org mode and that's enough. And what I'm trying to tell you is, if you know org and you write org, you can export it and make it, or turn it into another syntax. There is a function that you can invoke when you run an org mode buffer called org export dispatch. And if you use it, you have this buffer here, you can export it to like iCalendar, or to HTML, to LaTeX. You can even, if you have like octext installed or whatever else, you can totally like instantly compile it to PDF. Let's just export my config to LaTeX, and let's see what this looks like. I'm going to check config to tech, and there it is. It's the same thing, but in LaTeX. Now I don't have a way to compile it right now, not on this machine at least, but as you can see, it works. And there is the LaTeX major mode, so you have like syntax highlighting, and like this is, for instance, verbatim. This is actual code, right? So it has like a slightly different font, it's a bit smaller. It works very well. You can totally export this, and do another nice export option is the Twitter bootstrap, also known as like Blueprint or something. Let me export this and open it in Firefox. This is really nifty. I really like this export option because it looks really pretty, and it still has like syntax highlighting and all that. It even has my my parentheses coloring. It just took the syntax highlighting that was in the org mode file and pretty much recreated it in CSS and then HTML, and with a little bit of JavaScript you have this little nice menu here that you can just scroll down. Really nice. The export options they're great, really. Alright, this video is getting a bit long and I'm still not happy with what I have shown you. For moving around, I already spoke about AV, and there's again, like, what do I even have installed? How many packages do I have installed? Let me show you something that is hopefully going to blow your mind, because with Vim, what do you do when you want, like, some sort of package or some sort of extension? What do? You go, you look for it, add like a Vandal line to your config file, then you install it. Emacs. Emacs is a package manager, built in. Like, this is not an extension, this is built in. There's a lot of packages that you can simply install. It's like, you can even use your mouse. You can like click on stuff and then click install, and that's it. Like, see how, like, there's so many packages here. I'm scrolling and scrolling, and I barely like got to B. I have like even bash completion for the shell buffer. Like, you can install this and just use it. It's very easy to set up everything. There's a lot of packages. And that's cool, because this way you can actually truly customize it to be the way you want it to be. Now, I don't really use the package manager. I have, first let me show you something simple. I have a package called use package. So when my Emacs launches, it automatically installs all the packages that it didn't install yet. So I can, if I grab this config file, it's on GitHub, by the way. If you grab my config, put it in your home directory, launch Emacs, it's not going to complain about you not having installed enough packages. It's going to actually connect to the server, grab the package, compile them, and use them. Everything happens automatically because of this ensure T. Ensure stands for ensure that it's installed. And T is true in all the Lisp dialects, right? So again, very, very simple. And you can, what else would I like to show you? Is there something that's truly important? Well, other than me using Emacs as a window manager, which I, by the way, really, really endorse. I think it's great having, you know, all these key bindings, like globally, much like you have it set up, so everything you use uses HAKNL, and you're like, normal mode and insert mode, right? I have everything set up to be more Emacsy. Actually, there is some more things I would like to show you. Let me switch to the stretch buffer. Let's write a word like Amy, and then let's write Bob. If I go to, if I'm in Bob and I kill this word, okay, that sounded a bit wrong. Let me get to Amy, and I'm going to cut it as well, or kill it. And now when I paste stuff, I'm going to be pasting Amy. What if I, for instance, copied something 5 hours ago and I would like to have access to it? Because it's Emacs, you can totally do it. I have an extension installed that does it. Well, it does it out of the box. My extension just makes it a little bit nicer. This is all the stuff that I technically copied. So I can go to Bob, hit enter, and there it is. And you can increase the like maximum size of it to be like, I don't know, 500. Maybe you copy paste lines a lot in your spare time, so you will have access to everything in there. This is called the kill ring, and then, you know, every time you copy something or kill it, it's going to be added to the kill ring, and you can cycle through it normally with meta y. I have meta y bound to this. So remember, like a short while ago, I manually invoked kill word on nodes, and it's still there. That's just how cool it is. So the kill ring is really nice. Oh yeah, I have a few other things installed. Like I have, for instance, hungry deletion. Oh, I killed the scratch buffer. Bummer. If I have a lot of white space here and some more white space, if I hit backspace, I can delete like one character. If I hit backspace again, it deletes all of them. This is called hungry deletion, and it works very, very well. It just saves you a little bit of time, right? It's nothing major. Again, it's a minor mode, and you know, getting it to run is literally these 4 lines of code. You can even have it, like you can even do, I don't know, this, so it's 3 lines. It doesn't matter, it's takes so little to get this to work correctly. And again, rainbow, oh yeah, I have, if I have a hex code, I'm not sure why exactly this doesn't really work well, oftentimes. And in this VM it just doesn't, and I don't know why. But what happens normally, oh yeah, because oops. Yeah, when you do this, it normally highlights the background with the hex, or with the color corresponding to the hex code. It works with all hex codes, obviously. So you have, if you are doing like web development, if you are doing game development, or if you're just working with colors for whatever reason, like I did in the past, because I wrote a RxVT config file, and I was like in Qt and C++, and I was working with colors a lot, so I wished I had this back then. So that's really nifty. Another thing is, my line is always highlighted, the one the cursor is on, but this is optional. It's actually called highlight line mode, and it's up top in my config. I even have like little key bindings to visit my configuration and to reload the configuration. Well, there's really nothing else to it. Zapping to character. I don't use it this much. For instance, if you're here and you'd like to delete everything up to this T, you can do meta Z and then go T and then LS, and it's going to do exactly what you asked it to. So that's also pretty nifty. When I switch buffers, my cursor position is very, very briefly highlighted. It's called beacon mode. And again, like, there is no point in me showing you even more, because Emacs is truly what you want it to be. If you do not want to have like your line highlighted all the time, no biggie, just don't enable it. If you don't need to have this custom kill void command, no biggie, just don't write one command like this. If you like having a menu bar up top, leave it enabled. That's all there's to it. And obviously there's themes, right? Like every other editor, it has themes. I use the Spacemacs theme right now. I'm actually making my own because this one's getting stale after getting used to it. But it has good syntax highlighting. I really like it. Again, you can use Emacs, and Emacs and Vim are not mutually exclusive, as you once already said. Getting Emacs to work with evil mode, you can pretty much continue about your day as you did, and just use the key bindings you know and love, but have this extended functionality. Another thing that I would like to show you, oops, that's the wrong key binding. Another thing that I would like to show you is called Spacemacs. Now Spacemacs is an advanced Emacs kit, and it's made to be pretty much like Vim inside of Emacs. The best editor is neither Emacs nor Vim, it's Emacs and Vim, which is bullshit, because, I mean, come on. But you can use that. If you really want to, you can totally do that. Installing this takes like 5 minutes. You just copy the repository, you clone the repo to your Emacsd, or as your Emacsd, and then launch Emacs and wait for a short while. And it has a lot of built-in functionality. It's really, really good. To my liking, it's a bit too slow, because it has a lot of functionality in there. It's slow, okay? I mean, not slow as in it's slow when it runs, it's slow to actually be launched. It doesn't launch like instantly, like for instance Vim or my Emacs do. So yeah, if you are not very keen on actually going like balls deep and just replacing everything with Emacs and learning all the new key bindings, try out Spacemacs first. I tried out Spacemacs initially. I didn't like it very much, but I think it was very nice, because again, you barely have to configure anything, and you have like the leader key functionality, so when you're in normal mode and you hit space, you get everything is bound to pretty much like space, then I don't know, it was like WK, so like kill window, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I really recommend it. Give it a try. I wouldn't say that it's the best idea ever to like write your important big paper in Emacs when you don't really know Emacs. it's going to take you a few days of getting used to it, a few days of configuring it, to actually get it to a state where it's usable, or like fits your workflow and your style, right? I make videos on Emacs. These are not really like real tutorials, it's just a series. I made a series of videos that go from blank Emacs to actually usable Emacs, and if you are interested, by all means check them out. They're nothing special, but they are mine, and this is what I did. If you are not very into listening to me, then there is another series of videos by Mike Zemansky. It's called like Sela Z, and he makes a lot of videos on Emacs as well, and he has all these nice packages that he showcases as well. I'm not a big fan of all of those, but some of them are really, really nice, and I use them as well. And again, if you get into Emacs and you go like really deep and you actually like Emacs, you can have almost all your things be done in Emacs. Like you use MUT, right? I use MUT as well. Now I use mu for E, which is mu for Emacs, for my email, right? You use NCMP CPP, that's great. I use EMS because I use Emacs with the extension is called EMS. There's no need for me to have NCMP CPP. You use ST or RxVT Unicode. I used URXVT as well. I don't need to do anymore because I have Emacs. Pretty much everything I've been doing, like even Ranger, and I've used Ranger because I like the image preview, and I'm still trying to figure out how to get it to work in Emacs very well. There is actually, let me show you this. If you are going to be using evil mode, this is something that you might be interested in. Nope, that's not it. Ranger. Make the red more like Ranger, and it looks and acts pretty much like Ranger, and it has the same key bindings. So you can even do that. You can substitute most of your software needs with only Emacs. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to configure because you have actual, like, full-on freedom. You can do whatever the hell you want. This video is way too long. Alright, I figured I would drop in and add my 3 cents to it. So thank you for watching, everybody who's watched this, and look, if you watch this, do yourself the favor. It's not even like I'm trying to prove a point by having you, like, forcing you to use Emacs. That's not it. You should be using, whatever you're comfortable with. We both write a lot. Like, you are into linguistics, you have to write a lot, right? It's papers, it's like I write other things, but we both have to write a lot, and we both want to use the best tool for the job. I'm just saying, give Emacs a try, and give Emacs a try for longer than an hour. Because in the past I have installed and uninstalled Emacs multiple times, and each and every time I have said the same things. The key bindings are like beyond retarded. The out-of-the-box experience is horrible. Nothing works, everything is broken. Where is my Vim? But after giving it a serious try and actually watching like YouTube videos and reading like Stack Overflow posts by annoyed people and actually configuring it, I have come to love it so much that I don't use any other software for anything that's serious anymore. Like that's how good Emacs is. Yeah, I need a sip of my beverage here. Really, do yourself the favor. If you end up not liking it, by all means, continue using what you like using. But there is no... Oh, hold on. Actually, remember your video where you spoke about like why you don't use Apple products? And you said that you can think of a million reasons why people would use GNU Linux. You can think of a few reasons why people would use Windows, but you cannot, for the love of you, think of a reason why people would use like Apple products. And I'm in a similar boat. There is absolutely no reason to use Vim if Emacs exists. Alright, that's not even an attack to Vim users or the developers or the Vim fanbase or whatever. It's just that Emacs is objectively a superior software. That's all there is to it.